The wind howled through the shattered remnants of Zinthra's capital, the air thick with the taste of dust and war. Captain Elijah Foster stood at the edge of the crumbling city, gazing out over the ruins, his heart heavy with the weight of his mission. He was no stranger to destruction, his entire life had been shaped by it. But here, on this desolate planet, everything felt different. This was not just another military operation. Here, amidst the rubble, Eli had found something that tethered him to the very essence of humanity, something he had never expected. The Zra had razed the city long before he arrived, a brutal reminder of their dominance. The alien empire ruled this barren world with an iron fist, but it was not the Zra's strength that gnawed at Eli's conscience. It was what he had found hidden deep within their walls. A child. His daughter. She was an anomaly, half human, half Xra, a forbidden product of a bond that had defied the laws of both species. When he had first met her, he had seen only a child, fragile and vulnerable in a world bent on crushing her existence. But as days turned into weeks, as he continued to provide her with scraps of humanity, stories of Earth, the warmth of a touch, the gentle murmur of human affection, he realized that she was more than just a child. She was the bridge between two worlds, two civilizations on the brink of conflict. Eli's thoughts were interrupted by the sound of heavy footsteps echoing through the corridor behind him. He turned, his hand instinctively resting on the hilt of his sidearm, though he knew the visitor. His breath caught in his throat as she stepped into view, Queen Shorak, the ruler of the Zra, her eyes glowing with an intensity that matched the sun's fiery heat. "You've been here long enough, human," she said, her voice a low, dangerous whisper that sent a chill down his spine. "I have allowed you to care for my daughter, but you have overstepped your place." Eli's jaw tightened. He had known this moment would come. The Queen had been watching him closely, her eyes keen, ever calculating. He stood tall, meeting her gaze without flinching. "Your daughter needs me," he replied, his voice steady. "You may control everything else on this planet, but you can't control what's inside her. She's human, Shorak. She's mine." The Queen's eyes flickered with something. Was it pain? Anger? It was impossible to say. Her expression remained unreadable, a mask of regal composure. But there was a subtle shift in her stance, a tightening of her jaw that suggested something deeper was at play. "You dare claim her as your own?" she spat, her tone venomous. "She is my blood. My legacy. A symbol of the Zra's superiority." Eli stepped closer, not backing down. "She's more than that. She's a child. A daughter who deserves love, not tyranny." Shorak's lips curled into a snarl, her sharp alien features contorting with a mix of disbelief and fury. "How dare you speak of love? You, who are nothing more than a mortal, weak human. You have no place in this world, let alone in my family." "Yet she calls me father." Eli shot back, his voice rising in defiance. "What does that make you, Shorak? A queen who can't even keep her own blood from slipping away into the arms of someone she despises?" The Queen's eyes blazed, her gaze a firestorm of anger. "You will regret this, human," she hissed, her voice colder than the icy winds outside. "You will regret ever stepping foot in my domain. And I will make sure you never see her again." Eli knew this was coming. He had known the moment he took her in, the moment he allowed himself to feel the pull of a bond he couldn't explain. He had accepted the risk, the danger of this place. But now, as the Queen's fury rained down on him, he understood something he hadn't fully grasped before. This was not just about survival. It was about protecting the one thing he cared about in this universe, the child. "I don't regret it," Eli said firmly, his voice unwavering. "And I will protect her with my life. You can't control her, Shorak. You can't control me." The Queen's lips parted, her breath quickening. For a moment, Eli thought she might strike him, but instead, she turned on her heel and walked away, her long, dark cloak trailing behind her like the shadow of a storm. "You've made your choice," she said over her shoulder, her voice laced with malice. "And now, you will face the consequences." Eli stood there, the weight of her words hanging heavy in the air. He knew this was only the beginning. The Queen's wrath would come. The Zra would not tolerate insubordination, and they would come for him with everything they had. But in that moment, as he stood alone in the ruins of Zinthara, he realized that he had made his choice long ago. His daughter, the hybrid child, was not just a symbol of rebellion. She was his family. And no matter what it took, no matter the cost, he would not let her go. The silence that followed was deafening. Eli turned and walked away from the shattered view of the planet's surface, heading toward the small, hidden room where she awaited him. He had no illusions about the danger they faced. But in the flickering light of the broken world, he found a glimmer of hope. He would fight. He would survive. And he would keep her safe. When he entered the room, the child looked up from the small bundle of books she had been quietly reading. Her wide eyes, full of innocence and trust, met his, and for a brief moment, all the chaos of the galaxy seemed to fade away. "Are we going somewhere, Father?" she asked, her voice soft, like a whisper of wind through the trees of earth. Eli knelt beside her, brushing a lock of hair from her face. "Yes, sweet one. We're leaving. We'll be safe soon." But as he held her close, the weight of his promise to protect her pressed down on his chest, harder than ever. He knew that the fight was just beginning. The Queen would come for them, and when she did, Eli would be ready. There was no turning back now. The dim light of Zinthara's twin moons filtered through the cracked windows of the abandoned structure Eli had made his temporary hideout. The air was thick with the remnants of the day's heat, making it hard to breathe. But Eli didn't mind. His mind was elsewhere, racing, calculating, planning. The Queen's fury had not subsided. The harsh words she'd thrown at him echoed in his mind like a drumbeat, a constant reminder of the storm he had brought upon himself. He had always known there would be consequences for what he had done, but the weight of them was heavier than he had expected. It wasn't just his life on the line anymore. It was hers. His daughter. The hybrid child he had come to see as his own. The sound of soft footsteps interrupted his thoughts. Eli turned to see Kor, a former member of the Resistance, standing in the doorway. Kor was a tall, wiry man with a face scarred by years of fighting. He wasn't much older than Eli, but the hardships of this world had added decades to his appearance. "You're still here, Captain?" Kor asked, his voice laced with a mix of admiration and concern. "The Queen's forces are tightening their grip. If we don't move soon, we'll all be dead." Eli looked up, his expression hardening. "I know. But I can't leave her." Kor sighed, leaning against the wall. "I get it. She's not just the Queen's daughter. She's a symbol now. But this," he waved his hand around the room, "it's not a place for children. It's not a place for any of us. I didn't ask for any of this," Eli said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I never wanted her to be caught in the middle of this war." Kor raised an eyebrow. "Then why stay? Why keep her here?" Eli's eyes hardened. "Because she's mine. And if I leave her, the Queen will have her killed. She's not just a symbol. She's more than that. She's everything." Kor studied Eli for a moment before nodding. "I don't get it. But I'll help you. Whatever it takes." Eli exhaled deeply, grateful for Kor's loyalty. They had fought side by side in the Resistance for years, and now, in the face of impossible odds, their bond was stronger than ever. They would need each other if they were to survive the Queen's wrath. "I've been working on a plan," Eli said, standing up and walking over to a dusty map spread out on the floor. He tapped the map, outlining the path they would need to take. "The Queen's forces are spread thin, but they have too many eyes everywhere. We can't afford to make a mistake." Kor crouched next to him, examining the map. "What's the plan, then?" Eli pointed to a narrow passage marked in red on the map. "We'll use the old sewer tunnels to move undetected. They lead to the outskirts of the city, where we can meet up with the rest of the human captives. And after that? Once we're clear, we'll make our way to the escaped ship. It's our best shot." Kor's brow furrowed. "You're sure we can pull it off?" "No. But we don't have a choice," Eli replied, his voice firm. We leave tonight. As the hours passed, Eli gathered the small group of captives who had managed to evade the Queen's forces. He could feel the tension rising. They all knew what was at stake. If they were caught, there would be no second chance. The Queen's wrath would be swift and final. The hybrid child sat quietly in the corner, watching Eli with wide, trusting eyes. She had no understanding of the danger surrounding them, but Eli saw something in her that filled him with a sense of purpose, hope, perhaps. She was the reason they were doing this. The reason he was still fighting. He knelt down beside her, his hand resting gently on her shoulder. "We're going to leave soon, little one," he whispered. "You'll be safe. I promise." The child smiled up at him, her face lighting up with innocence. "I'm not afraid, Father." Eli's heart clenched in his chest. How could she be so unafraid, so trusting? It was a trait he longed for, but he knew that fear was not something easily dismissed. They would need more than courage to survive this night. With the group assembled and the plan in place, Eli led them out of the hideout and into the darkness of Zinthara's forgotten tunnels. The air was damp and stale, the walls lined with mildew and old debris. The sound of their footsteps echoed eerily as they moved deeper into the labyrinth. Kor took point, his rifle ready as they navigated the tunnels. Eli brought up the rear, his hand always within reach of his sidearm. The tension was palpable. Every corner they turned, every shadow they passed, held the possibility of a trap. Yet Eli's focus never wavered. His mind was solely on the child, and the promise he had made to keep her safe. As they neared the end of the tunnels, a sharp sound pierced the silence, an explosion in the distance. The ground shook beneath their feet, and Eli's heart leaped into his throat. "The Queen knows," Kor said, his voice grim. "They've found us." Eli didn't hesitate. "Move faster! We're almost there." But the noise grew louder. Footsteps, shouting, the unmistakable hum of alien technology. Shorak's forces were closing in. They had to hurry. When they finally reached the exit, they found it barricaded by debris. A group of armed Zra soldiers stood just beyond the rubble, their weapons drawn, waiting. Eli's heart sank. There was no way around them. No more tunnels. This was the end of the line. Kor cursed under his breath, his eyes scanning the scene. "We can't fight our way out of this." "We don't have to," Eli said, his voice low and steady. He turned to the hybrid child, who was still clutching his hand. "I need you to do something for me. Can you trust me?" The child nodded, her eyes wide with innocence. Eli turned back to Kor, his mind racing. There was no other option. The Queen had made her move. They had one chance to turn the tide. With a quick motion, Eli drew his sidearm, aiming it at the ceiling. "Stay down!" he shouted as he fired into the air, the deafening sound of the blast ringing in their ears. The Zra soldiers froze for a split second, uncertainty flickering in their eyes. It was enough. "Now!" Eli shouted, pulling the child close. In that moment, the fight for their lives began. The sound of footsteps echoed down the darkened hall, sharp and relentless. Eli's heart pounded in his chest, but he didn't let it show. He had to remain calm. He had to be the leader they all needed him to be. They were close. So close. The escape ship was only a few hundred meters away, hidden beneath the ruins of an old city district, and yet, as the Zra soldiers grew nearer, Eli felt the weight of inevitability press down on him. The Queen's wrath was coming, and he couldn't outrun it forever. He moved through the wreckage with the child clutched close to his side, her small hand wrapped tightly around his fingers. Her presence, the warm, innocent weight of her, gave him a strength he didn't know he had. She was his responsibility. His daughter. Everything in him burned with the desire to protect her, no matter the cost. "Move out quietly," Eli whispered to Kor, who was crouched ahead of him, keeping watch. The others were already following, their faces grim but determined. Every step felt like a countdown to their doom. Kor gave a sharp nod, signaling the rest of the group to follow. The tunnel ahead was narrow, their path illuminated only by the faint glow of dim emergency lights. A breathless silence enveloped them as they moved deeper into the labyrinthine passageways. Eli's mind was focused on only one thing: getting them all to safety. "We're almost there," Cor muttered under his breath, his rifle poised and ready. "The ship's just beyond this next intersection. We can make it if we move fast." But Eli knew better than to get his hopes up. The Queen's forces were closing in, and even if they made it to the ship, they'd be sitting ducks in open space if they couldn't outmaneuver the enemy. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed through the hall, followed by the unmistakable sound of alien voices barking orders. Eli's heart skipped a beat. "They've found us!" Cor hissed. "There's no time left." Eli didn't hesitate. He spun around, motioning for the group to take cover against the walls. They crouched low, weapons drawn, waiting for the soldiers to come into view. The sounds of the Zra soldiers grew louder, the distinct hum of their weapons buzzing in the still air. The tunnel was too narrow for them to avoid a confrontation. Eli cursed under his breath. There was no way they were going to make it out unnoticed. He turned to Cor, locking eyes. "We fight our way out. We don't stop. Not for anything." Cor's jaw tightened, but he nodded, determination hardening his features. "Understood." The first of the soldiers rounded the corner. Eli acted without thinking. He surged forward, moving with a speed and precision he had honed over years of combat. His sidearm fired in quick succession, taking down the first soldier in a blur of movement. The others hesitated, but only for a moment. The firefight erupted instantly. Shots flew through the air, ricocheting off the walls. Eli's heart hammered as he ducked behind a pillar for cover, his mind working on instinct. He kept his focus on the enemy, moving quickly and decisively. Cor was at his side, his rifle firing in precise bursts, taking down enemy soldiers with chilling accuracy. But the Zra were relentless. They weren't going to give up without a fight. "Keep moving!" Eli shouted, grabbing the child's hand and pulling her along with him as he sprinted forward, his boots pounding against the cold, concrete floor. They reached the intersection, and Eli's eyes locked on the exit. The ship, their ship, was within reach. Just a few more steps. But then, a voice sliced through the chaos. "You won't escape, human!" The Queen's voice rang out, cold and full of venom. "I will not let you take what's mine." Eli froze, his breath caught in his throat. He knew that voice. He turned just in time to see Queen Shorak emerge from the shadows, flanked by her elite guards. She stood tall, regal, and terrifying, her eyes burning with the fury of 1,000 suns. Her gaze locked onto him, filled with hatred. "You're not leaving this planet, human," she sneered. "Not with her." Eli's grip tightened around the child's hand. He could feel her trembling, but her gaze was steady, her trust in him unwavering. He swallowed hard, forcing himself to stay calm. "I told you," Eli said, his voice low but resolute. "She's mine. And I will protect her. You cannot protect her from me." The Queen spat, her hand lifting in the air, signaling for her guards to advance. "You are nothing. You are a mere human, and you will fall before the might of the Zra." Without another word, Shorak raised her weapon, a massive energy cannon, its glowing core humming with deadly intent. She aimed it directly at Eli and the child. "Move!" Eli shouted, shoving the child behind him and leaping to the side just as the cannon discharged. The blast tore through the air, and the force of it sent debris flying. Eli's heart raced as he rolled to his feet, his hand reaching for his sidearm. The gunfire was deafening, the entire corridor filled with the sound of battle. The Queen's guards advanced, their weapons raised, but Eli didn't hesitate. He moved with purpose, his focus razor-sharp. He fired, his shots hitting their targets with deadly accuracy. But it wasn't enough. The Zra were relentless. And then, in the midst of the chaos, something changed. The hybrid child, his daughter, stepped forward. Her small form appeared in the space between Eli and the Queen, standing tall and unafraid. Her eyes locked with Shorak's, and for a moment, everything seemed to freeze. The Queen faltered, her weapon lowering slightly. Her gaze softened, confusion flickering across her features. "No," she whispered, her voice a mix of disbelief and sorrow. "What have you done?" The child's voice was soft but filled with conviction. "I am who I am because of both of you. But I choose my path." Eli's breath caught in his throat. He had never heard her speak like that before, with such strength. And for the first time, he saw the full weight of her potential, the power of a being who belonged to both worlds. The Queen's shoulders slumped, her weapon now dangling at her side. "You choose him, then? The human?" "I choose love," the child replied, her gaze unwavering. "I choose to be more than what you want me to be." Eli could hardly believe what he was hearing. In that moment, the battle stopped, not with force, but with understanding. A shift had occurred. The Queen's face twisted in a mixture of anger and grief, but it was clear that she had lost. She had no power over this child. No power over Eli. With a final, mournful glance at her daughter, the Queen turned, her guards following her into the shadows. As the tension ebbed away, Eli exhaled, his body shaking with the adrenaline of the fight. The child was safe. They were safe. For now. Eli knelt beside her, his hand resting on her shoulder. "You did it! You saved us!" The child smiled, her face a picture of quiet strength. "We saved each other, Father." And in that moment, Eli knew that the future was uncertain, but as long as they were together, they could face whatever came next.